Hey everybody, it's Mike from Here the Watchman, and I'm in Idaho. Our guest today is in London, England. Where are you? And I let us know. Go in the comments section here. Let us know where you are, where you're listening to us from. And also, I got to ask you this morning, what the heck's wrong with you? I mean, if you're watching this and you are not coming to Hear the Watchman, Dallas, Texas, March 29th through the 31st, something is seriously amiss. Mark is coming from London, England. Haley's coming from Australia, New South Wales. Audrey's coming, and Brian are coming from Canada. And we have other people coming from Nova Scotia, Scandinavia. And you're sitting there watching this interview on your couch right here in the United States, probably in Texas, and you haven't bought a ticket yet. Get there. Here are the Watchmen, MEN.com. Go there, get there today, use the promotional code HTW20, and I'll give you $20 off the purchase of your ticket. Get there, we want you there. Today we have from the other side of the pond, all the way over in London, as I mentioned, my dear friend and brother, Mr. Mark Sutherland. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure, Mike. Lovely to see you. And after a few technical hitches, we are now here where we're communicating 5,000 miles away. And I'm looking forward to doing my 10,000-mile round trip, as I say, for a long weekend to see you in Dallas on the 28th of March. I'm really looking forward to that very much. And in all seriousness, for me, it's a long weekend where I come along and I catch up with family and dear friends, where frankly, I don't have to apologize for anything I say. I don't have to justify anything from a biblical point of view or anything like that, because I'm amongst a group of friends that we just go, we're all on the same page. And at this hour in the world that we're looking at, you have just brilliantly, it's fantastic. I look forward to meeting all these people that are outside America. I just feel that it's really profound that, you know, a number of us are coming over because this is a global fight. We'll end up touching on that, I think, today. It's what's really on my heart. This is a global fight. You talk about our dear friends in Canada, you know, we're looking at Trudeau, and we're, you know, yes, we're in 2019, but we're already getting ready. We've got to get ready for, as my T-shirt says, for 2020. We've got to get ready now. You know, this is so serious, particularly on what's happening over here and what's happening for you in the US.
Absolutely, Mark. I mean, you know, and let's look at, you and I love to rant, and we're going to do that today. But I mean, let's look at what's going on here in America. Okay, we have this wonderful diversion right now here in the United States called the polar, whatever it is, express, or the whole freeze that's hit this country. And here we have it again. You know, it's been here before. So now mainstream media every day, that's all they talk about. They talk about people going outside and freezing to death. Duh. I mean, I got an email the other day from someone who knows that I live in the mountains of Idaho where it gets very cold, and they said, "What do you do to survive when it gets below zero?" And I said, "I don't go outside." I mean, you know, but mainstream media, that's all they're talking about. You know, they're talking about that. And if I see one more YouTube video of someone going outside and throwing a glass of hot water in the air to make snow, I'm going to vomit. I mean, folks, snow happens. Water turns to ice, turns to snow. Snow happens. You don't have to make it on your own. It'll happen. So that's what's going on here in the States. And I look over here at our favorite here in the United States, RAG from the UK, Daily Mail, UK, and I noticed something interesting. They're not talking about anything in London. All they're talking about is what's going on here in the States. So I got to ask you, Mark, what's happening on your side of the pond? Is your divorce over yet with Brexit? What's going on?
Well, no, it isn't. And frankly, what is going on, and yes, we've had a little bit of snow. In fact, in various parts of the country, we've had a heck of a lot of snow. But let's focus, which, I mean, as caused a number of people a lot of issues. But let's focus on the major issue. And you're absolutely right. Diversion. You're having a diversion in regard to the war. We over here. So Mrs. May. This week on Tuesday, after various amendments being put forward by the fact that we've got 650 MPs, most of them don't seem to want to leave the European Union, as you and I have discussed on a number of occasions, even though that 17,410,752 people, with a majority of over a million, voted to leave the European Union. And in our recent election in 2017, 468 of those MPs that were then in Parliament put forward Article 50 to say that we would be leaving, which is rather ironic in regard to their behaviour now as we come up to 60 days before we, as you brilliantly said, before we divorce from the European Union. So what is actually going on? What's going on is that various MPs put amendments forward to try and halt us from leaving the EU by extending Article 50, by turning round and going, right, OK, let's look at this. What could we do next? Oh, what we could do is to extend Article 50 temporarily till December, or let's take the no deal off the table, etc., etc. There was about 5 different amendments. And praise God, we have reached a point where the no deal, as far as I'm concerned, will be the only option. We are being funneled into this direction. And Vorstad, that well-known man of oratory inside the EU, who conducts himself in such a wonderful manner in regard to the European governance, where he's screaming for more countries to hand over their sovereignty to the European socialist monolithic construct that was designed in 1923 by 2 people, Jean Monnet and Arthur Salter, saying, look, how come that amendment was lost by a few votes? That amendment was lost by a few votes. Well, I just want to encourage you, and this is really important, and I don't mean this any, patronizing or rude way. We know that on your side of the pond, you are praying for us, and we are praying for you. And the fundamental issue is that prayer works. And prayer works so much so that Mr. Vorstad has basically nearly stuck his head up his own backside, because he cannot believe that Westminster Parliament, the MPs, cannot swing things in their favour. We are going to leave. So what's happened now is that Mrs. May has got yet back onto her little shuttle, whether she's going through the Channel Tunnel or flying, most probably, and has to then go and have another discussion with the European Union to try and renegotiate the deal, even though within 10 minutes of the vote going, Mr. Tusk turned around and said, we are not renegotiating anything, or the worst, the sort of European accent I can do at this time. But so he said that they're not going to renegotiate the backstop, which is this whole issue. Southern Ireland is part of the European Union. Let's just say this. There's a wonderful journalist called Gemma Doherty, and I apologize if I'm killing her surname, who has revealed how the elite within Southern Ireland either make sure that people like her can't come and they can throw their hat in the ring to become president, but it doesn't mean that because you're not a member of the elite club that's not going to go forward. But she, as an investigative journalist, has talked about a number of issues, and one thing ends up talking about or exposing where in Southern Ireland, when it first of all it had a vote and then it turned down going into the European Union, and then of course the elites, in combining with the European Union, go forward and go, we want you to vote again. Basically, we want you to vote until we get the vote that we want. So Southern Ireland is in the European Union. Northern Ireland, of course, is part of the United Kingdom. And the six members of the Democratic Unionist Party, who are from Northern Ireland, are the Conservative arm, the Conservative Party that basically prop up the government of Mrs. May. And the important thing about the DUP is that they knew back in 1972, they knew fully what the joining the common market was all about. was the fact that it was leading to a construct where you lost the sovereignty. So it's amazing how all these years later that this party is then totally involved in upholding Mrs. May's parliament. And remember that the Prime Minister May is a Remainer. So on the outside, from your point of view, you could say, not from your point of view personally, but from an American point of view, or maybe other people's point of view, they could say that it's total chaos. It isn't total chaos, as far as I'm concerned. The fight is between nationalism and globalism. And what is being exposed is when you've got the Speaker of the House of Commons, which is a gentleman called Bercow, basically putting in amendments which are against, you could argue, that are against the constitutional construct of our nation. We have, as Melanie Phillips, the wonderful journalist, wrote, the banana republic, we have a coup against the mother of all parliaments. And that is what has been attempted. Now, some people listening to me now would think I'm being extremely extreme. No, I'm not being extreme. Because when Cameron set up the vote, it was a winner takes all, once and for all decision to leave the EU, the biggest vote for a generation. He did not expect, along with the government then, they did not expect to lose the vote. And they lost the vote by a majority of over 1 million. And for 2.5 years nearly, and since Article 50 went in 2 years ago in March 2017, there has been a stalling going on. Mike, what is a complete revelation to me, and I think these are the lessons that are going across the pond that you and I constantly discuss about and other people are revealing. You know, that wonderful verse in Hosea, I think 4 verse 6, where it talks about, I've mentioned it many times, my people are destroyed through lack of knowledge. Things are being revealed to us. Our own deep state is being revealed. When we look at civil servants that have been engrossed in our own parliament, and if we take someone like Ollie Robbins, who has, as a civil servant, has been given the task, and I say it cynically, of negotiating on behalf of the EU with us, you know, to try and, I believe, tie us in. And it's shocking when you look at his own personal history. When he was at Oxford, he was part of a debating club that was EU and federalist, that was pro the EU. And this kind of individuals as civil servants are then bang in the middle of our government. And this particular individual served under Cameron's government and went all the way through, was in the Home Office with Theresa May as well, and then is back going, you're now going to be our leading civil servant in regard to negotiating. I mean, it's stunning. It's shocking when we begin to find out all this information. And the key thing I'll say at the beginning of this fairly calm rant is the fact that Melanie Phillips, that wonderful journalist, revealed the fact that, according to her and other insiders in a meeting, that the European Union already gave us the fact that we don't have to be part of the customs union, etc., and that we would just be outside and that we would just be able to trade within the tariffs that we presently have. And finally, just sum up, there is a complete misnomer here. And this is the other thing that isn't out there. When you take the WTO, the World Trade Organization, we could trade under Article 24 of that WTO organization for 2 years, which is exactly the same trading deals that we've got with the European Union at this time. And then it would then we could use those 2 years to renegotiate treaties. So there is a lot of propaganda, etc., all being thrown out there. But that's my summary of where we are at present.
Well, Mark, I think you're very accurate. And folks, I want to apologize if you hear some noise in the background. My wife is on the phone. I mean, she apparently has forgotten that I'm doing an interview right now, but that's all right. You know, whatever. You know, I mean, Mark, I mean, let's tear this apart a little bit deeper. I mean, you know, it's got to be like you said, it's like a new world order kind of thing. It's an agenda because here in the
Yes. Yeah.
States, I mean,
Yes.
you look at the wall and the attacks on Trump and just the viciousness of American
Mm,
politics today. I mean,
mm,
we've got a.
mm,
I mean,
mm,
let's look at this. Okay, we have a Muslim burqa wearing, and yes, I just said it, burqa wearing politician
mm,
in the
mm,
House right now who wants to promote with another young woman who's in the House, wants to promote a 90% taxation rate on the wealthy. Now,
mm,
here's a brilliant idea. Oh, let's tax these people who create jobs, who came up with a wonderful idea. Let's take 90% of their income so
mm.
that we can pay other people to sit on their butts and do absolutely nothing. Now, that's what happens here in America. You look at
Absolutely.
what's going on there. I mean, you guys are going through this divorce, and I guarantee you, Mark, you're going to have to make alimony payments once you're done to get out of this thing. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy world. What do we do, in your opinion,
Well, that.
to bring it all back together?
Mm. Well, it's interesting when you talk about alimony payments. That's part of the big row that's going on because the EU has asked for 39 billion pound or billion euros in payment, and as you said, in alimony. Well, let's just break that down. We pay the European Union 13 billion pound a year or euros a year. Now, of 4 billion of that, we then get back in subsidies. Now. That's a heck of a lot of money. And as Nigel Lawson, one of our previous recent chancellors in the 80s and was Margaret Thatcher's chancellor, he turned around and said, the thing is, what you do, you hand over a load of money to the EU, they recycle it and give you 50% back. And then you wonder what's going on with the rest. I mean, the key thing is that when we joined the common market, we joined as the 7th member. There are now 28 members of the European Union. So what you're doing, we are the second biggest, and you will understand this from your previous experience on Wall Street. We are the second biggest net contributor to the European Union. They are absolutely worried about the fact that money they will have to find. Deutsche Bank will then have to find. Deutsche Bank will then turn on the printing presses, I should think, and from a central bank or the ECB, European Central Bank, and print like mad. You are absolutely right. This is a global conspiracy. And let's just touch on something. We have what's called the Fabian Society, set up in around about 1884. The Fabian Society are this socialist group. And when you look at their motto, there's a picture of a wolf in sheep's clothing. I looked at it last night. I couldn't believe it, really. And the thing is, every day over the last few days, I'm going around going, why didn't I know this? Why didn't I know this? Why did I not know this? Right. And things are being revealed. So the Fabian Society is basically, it was then into abortion, eugenics, people like H.G. Wells, Bernard Shaw, members of this. And it is where the Labour Party was born out of. Right. In certain sectors, that is what it was born out of. And it then adheres to socialism of, instead of then going into violence or oppression from a communist point of view, where you would then put your tyranny on the particular country you're then involved with, this is then step by step taking various things away, taking the authority away. They talk about having high taxes. They talk about that. They even talk about the whole green agenda as a way of then controlling people. Does this all sound familiar, Mike? Because it certainly sounds very familiar to me. So you've got this Omar lady going, we want 90%. Let's just quote something else that she said. She also said that every time Israel gets quoted as a democracy, she chuckles. So personally, if you've got people like that, and then you've got that Tigray woman, I think, oh, I totally most probably murdered her name. Someone else then who is going, suddenly seeing with a picture of someone maybe from Hamas or whatever, or the Muslim Brotherhood, I think. This is deeply, deeply concerning and very worrying. And people have actually voted for these people. They've actually voted for people of their own demise. And that's like with the Fabian Society as well. So this whole global construct and global government has been in play for a long time. You could say it's been in play since a minimum of 1884. Now, if we then go into Albert Pike going, having that vision, talked about the First World War and the Second World War. I don't necessarily want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but let's just bring it right up to date. Let's bring it right up to date, because there's been all this attempt. You can then look at just trying to think, Wilson, Colonel House, the formation of the Federal Reserve. We're just listing things that people then need to look at, because these have been pointers in regard to the control. Now, I don't know if you see this book written, which is Global Tyranny Step by Step, which is written by William F. Jasper, The United Nations and the Emerging New World Order. Now, I've had the privilege to be on a radio show with this guy. I'm blown away, because this book, Mike, was written in 1992. I don't think it's in print now. And I actually have 2 copies. And one on a particular page in this book, on 241, he talks about the EU. And this whole thing of deception, the deception that you're seeing on your side of the pond, the deception that we're seeing on this side of the pond. So 2 things. Jean Monnet, when they came up with this whole thing, at the end of the Second World War, they have thrown out a massive bit of propaganda to say that the EU, it's kept all this peace since 1945. That's what it's actually done. That's what it's been about, even though it was an idea that was formulated in the 1920s. And that's key as well. And Monet was trying to run around when he was in America to try and also to garner support to stop the Second World War, blah, blah, blah. Now, let's just jump ahead. At the end of the Second World War, when Europe is devastated, you then have what's called the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan that came in to then rebuild the European construct, rebuild Europe. The Marshall Plan, named after General Marshall. But actually, it wasn't Marshall's plan. It was Jean Monnet's plan, who was the founder of the European Union, who then put his whole socialist way of thinking and said, here you go, Mr. General Marshall, this is what we could do. And he adopted that plan. It's a bit like Eisenhower in 1951. Jean Monnet is having another discussion with him. And at that time, and again, we're not making this up. We can go through history. We can look at books called The History of Europe and the Great Deception, written by North and Booker, who go through this. And Monnet was concerned that the European Union would not take off because of the Korean War and beginnings of that. And he ended up having another conversation with Eisenhower. And the key thing to say here is that then was beginning to have a discussion about creating a European army, Mike. All of these things have gone on before, and we are not making this up. So coming back to your key question, this is the key answer, right? I don't sit here, as I often do, saying that I am some amazing theologian. I'm not. But we are involved in the biggest spiritual battle of our lifetime. What's happening is that the battle is manifesting itself within our political constructs. That's what's going on. Over here, a vast majority of the MPs are not, most of them are not Christians. There are some who are, or some of them have certainly say they're Christians, but then one I'm just thinking of have had a number of out of Bible experiences, as we call it. And you're the same on your side of the pond. So Ephesians 6 talks about the fact that we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. And we are in this battle. So you say to me, what is the answer? The answer is prayer. This is a ginormous, massive prayer battle like no other. When Donald Trump, as he was then, was heading towards winning the presidency in November 2016, you and I have discussed before, and I've discussed with others, that someone has put forward there was a minimum of 56,000 intercessors across America who really take prayer seriously. Of course, then there were many others behind them praying. And our exit out of the EU comes down to prayer, Mike. That's what it does. And that's why I am heartened. I'm heartened by the fact that at the Hear the Watchman this year, you talked about people coming from Australia, Scandinavia, Nova Scotia, and other parts of the world. And I'm going to ask you that it'd be great if we could all get us in a room personally, because we're starting to make all those global connections. We need those connections because we're all facing the same thing. And we need to talk to each other as well as we know that the enemy is talking to each other. You only have to see that in the media, the way the media is constructed, the way the media was constructed via the BBC in regard to leading up to Trump and all the objections they had to him. You see that in regard to their fight against the European Union and the bias in regard to the Remain camp. It's there. It's there. Just recently, in the last few days, it's reported that the BBC showed a speech by Vostad. But before Vostad spoke, Nigel Farage spoke. But that speech then wasn't shown, unless I've read that wrongly. So our fight, coming back to that question, Mike, our fight, this is prayer. This is prayer, this is fasting, and this is you and I, we all have to reach out to each other, because at times it becomes an extremely lonely walk and extremely isolating walk, because not everyone is on the same page. Not everyone understands what is happening in regard to biblical prophecy and how things are unfolding.
Amen, Mark. And listen, folks, we're going to have to wrap it up today. But do you think that Mark and I are absolutely crazy? We're not. Trust me, we are not. We need you to pray. We need you to pray, not just for America. Pray for everyone. Pray for Mark, and pray for the people of Britain, our ally, always been our ally. Pray for them. That is truly the answer. Now, if you really think we're nuts and you want to come out and talk to us, come on out to Hear the Watchman in Dallas. Where we are sounding the alarm, man. We are sounding the alarm. We are going to tell people what's really going on. HearTheWatchman.com. Mark, I really want to thank you for joining us today. You and I see things sort of the same way, even though we're from opposite sides of the pond. God bless you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, my brother. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time.
That's right. It's only, 60 days away, basically. So get out there. It's less than 60. Absolutely. Get out there, folks. Get busy. Activate your faith. Become like me, where you want to send that burqa-wearing woman that's a part of our government back to Afghanistan and let God sort the whole thing out. Come on out. Talk to people like us. Be a part of the solution, not the problem. As I always say here on the Watchman's Report, remember, there's nothing that you can't do with Jesus in your heart, except nothing at all. Get busy. We'll see you next time here on the Watchman's Report.